Cerb brings order to a busy team inbox.
A feature that a lot of people have asked for is a way to start keeping track of satisfaction ratings inside of Cerb. And there are other apps that you can use for that where you just put a link in every outgoing email, somebody clicks on it, and then it records the satisfaction from a survey in that other app. But we figured that we could do all of that better in Cerb. And we figured we could also probably do it better than just sending somebody to a boring old form. So here's what we've been working on in Cerb 7.4, using our conversational bots and putting them on external websites. So first, let's just say you're going to track the 3 common satisfaction metrics. The Net Promoter Score is something that you would send to each customer, and then you would see how likely they are to refer you to other people. So that would be stored on every contact record. The Customer Satisfaction Score is something that would be tracked at each interaction. So every time a worker sends a message as a reply to a customer, that customer can rate how helpful that message was to them. And then each time you close a ticket, you could track customer effort, which is basically the customer saying how easy the entire process was for them to get their issue solved. So now that we have these field sets, we don't want to be setting them by hand. So that's where the bots come in. We've created this satisfaction bot, and right here you can see 16 behaviors that make this bot work. It tracks the customer effort score, customer satisfaction, the Net Promoter Score, and it deals with the portal, and I'll get into that in a minute. And this may look a little complicated at first, but we're going to make it possible to just import this bot along with everything that it needs. Those 3 field sets, all these behaviors, and eventually the dashboard you'll be reporting on. So let's say you want to start by tracking the Net Promoter Score, and you would do that by sending out a broadcast to all of your customers who haven't filled out a Net Promoter Score, or at least who haven't filled one out recently. And you would just ask them how likely they are to recommend Cerb and say, if you can spare a few seconds, we have 2 quick questions and here's a quick link. So now let's say that a customer got this email and they clicked on this link. They'd be taken to a page where a bot would just start talking to them. And the bot just asks, how likely are you to recommend Cerb to your friends and colleagues? And you have the scale from 0 to 10, which is the standard Net Promoter Scale. Let's just say they click 9. So click Send Rating. And there's just a simple follow-up. Why do you feel that way? Cerb is the best. And then it thanks you. That's it. You'll notice that we have a new Net Promoter custom field set on this contact. They just filled out the survey. And that field set was set for us. They picked a 9 out of 10. And they just filled it out, and they put a little comment on there for us. So that's a good start. We have a survey that went out to a customer from a broadcast. They clicked the link, a bot answered that link, and it asked them some questions. They filled out a couple quick answers, and that automatically was set on the field set on our contact. Now you might be wondering, how does that work? When people are clicking those links, we have a new community portal where you can host conversational bots. These are the same kind of bots as the ones that would pop up in Cerb. But now they can pop up on any website anywhere on the internet. And you can send people directly to a bot portal where you don't need to set up a site in advance, or you can actually overlay one of these little Cerb bot buttons directly on your website. Somebody will click on that link, and the bot's checking what kind of interaction was it. Was it a customer effort at the end of a ticket? Was it customer satisfaction for each message? Or was it the Net Promoter Score, which is the one we just did? For each one of those, it verifies the signature. And all it's doing is checking if the signature that we sent them matches the signature that we're generating. And we generate a signature ourselves from the request here. So that's kind of tamper-proofing the request. Somebody can't just edit the email address or edit the email mask and then start filling out surveys for other people. They would also have to know how to generate that hash for that email address along with your secret and any other information that you're hashing that they may not know about. So if the signature passed, then it's going to start a new Net Promoter Score survey. And all that does is a simple action that uses a behavior to start the interaction. It passes it as an email address, the email address that was in the URL, and it starts it on the behavior Net Promoter Score survey. That's a new conversational bot behavior. So let's go look at what that does. All right, so somebody clicked into our Net Promoter Score survey. The interaction decided it was going to start this conversational behavior from a chat portal. So it's just saying we have a conversation with a portal visitor. And these conversations automatically will pause and resume as you're prompting for input. So they're a lot easier than the conversational behaviors that we had in Cerb 7.3. So in this case, we're saying, do we know their email address already? If we don't, we prompt them for it. And the reason that we do that is maybe somebody was filling out a different survey to start with. Maybe they were doing the customer effort survey at the end of their ticket, or maybe they were doing customer satisfaction at the end of a message. While we have their attention, we can have the bot realize that they didn't fill out a Net Promoter Score yet. And we can simply transition at the end of the survey that they filled out. We can say, hey, if you have a few more seconds, how likely are you to recommend Cerb to your friends and colleagues? And then it will fill out this behavior. If it knows their email address, we could just pass that through. If that survey that we were doing previously didn't know their email address, it will just prompt them for it seamlessly. Then it'll look up their contact. If it knows who they are, it'll say hi. And then it will simply ask that question. How likely are you to recommend Cerb to your friends and colleagues? And then it will prompt them with a numeric rating scale, 0 to 10, starting at red, ending at green, and the midpoint on that we wanted it to be yellow. And that just looks a little bit nicer than bleeding straight from red to green like Christmas. So after it's asked how likely, it's waiting for a response. Every time you see one of these prompts, the behavior is pausing, it's stowing everything that it knows, and the bot's just waiting for somebody to reply. And then instead of that behavior starting over on the next message, it starts right here. It saves their reply. In this case, it's splitting after the slash because there's a slash that says 9 out of 10 or 5 out of 10. So we're just keeping the first number and we're ignoring the 10 part. Then it asks a simple follow-up question, why do you feel that way? And it prompts them with text input, telling them that it's optional to comment. Then, similarly, we just save a new placeholder with the survey comment, which is whatever they type. And then we just run a behavior on the contact to set the survey custom fields on their record. And we just pass it the score as the rating that they said, and we pass the comment. And this behavior is really simple. It just checks that the rating was valid, and if so, it sets the rating, the date, and the IP, and then it checks if they provided a comment that's not empty. If so, it sets the comment. So there you have a Net Promoter Score. You sent out a survey link, somebody clicked it, the bot asked them a few questions, the bot stored it on a custom field set, and now you can see that inside Cerb. So let's look at the customer satisfaction. As I mentioned earlier, customer satisfaction happens every time you send a message to the customer. They can rate if that message was helpful or not to them. So in this case, we said this is a thoughtful and detailed answer to your question. And then how did I do at the bottom here? And there's a link. If somebody was to click this link, another bot would pop up. It's checking its notes, and it says, 53 minutes ago, you were assisted by Kina regarding your issue's server requirements for Cerb. How satisfied are you with the service that you received? And now we're seeing 3 emoji icons. I'm happy, kind of neutral or ambivalent, or I'm unhappy. In this case, we'll say, I'm happy. And then it's asking, how can we improve the service? Let's say, reply faster on weekends. It says, thanks for your feedback. Now we're all done with that bot. Then we come back and we look at our record here, and we see the customer was very satisfied, and then they said reply faster on weekends is their comment. So that's useful. Now, for each message in the conversation, we could be tracking customer satisfaction, at least for every outgoing message. Now for the final of the 3 satisfaction metrics, this is the customer effort score. So once you close a ticket, Cerb would automatically send out an email. In this case, for this demo, I just had it set up a comment so that we can see what the email would be, since we're not going to go open up an email client and read the email message. But every time you close a ticket, it would send out this link. And the people who came up with the customer effort score had said that it's a good idea to wait maybe 24 or 48 hours before sending out the completion link, just so that somebody's not writing back after you close it and saying, actually, I still have issues. You don't want to be sending out a survey when something like that happens. So after you're satisfied, after a day or 2, you can have this email sent out, and the link will look like this. You'll just say, you recently contacted us, here is the reference number, here's the subject, how did we do? So somebody clicks this after we solved their issue. And for this person, look, they sent an email, I need some help, but their issue's closed. So they would click this link, the bot would pop up and say, we recently resolved your issue, I need some help. And it says, to what extent do you agree or disagree with the following statement? The Cerb support team made it easy to resolve my issue. Well, we didn't actually answer their issue, so they would click disagree. Well, and they would say, you closed my issue without replying to it. And they're done. Now in Cerb, we'll see there's a customer effort field set on this ticket. They rated it 2 on a scale of 1 to 7. And they said, you closed my issue without replying to it. All right, now that we're collecting all of this data for these 3 different metrics, we want to do something to report on it. And to do that, we really handed dashboards over to bots. And a Net Promoter Score is a good example of something you couldn't plot on a dashboard easily before, because the Net Promoter Score is computed by more than just a simple average or sum. First, you have to take the total number of ratings. Then you need to find the total number of those who are promoters. Those are people who rated at 9 or 10. You also need to find the detractors, who are anybody who rated it less than 7. And everybody in the middle are the undecideds, the passives, and you just ignore them. So then you take the percentage of promoters, in this case it's 6 out of 10 or 60%, you subtract the detractors, 2 out of 10, which is 20%. You're left with a score of 40. And by doing that, you have a scale that can go from negative 100, where everybody's upset, to positive 100, where everybody's happy. And we just created this little gauge where you can kind of see this is the passive zone, this is the unhappy zone, and you want to be more into the green here, where more people are promoters. So before, there was no real way you could have done the math here to figure out what this score would be. But you'll notice if we look at this gauge, it has a new data source, bot behavior. Before, you just had manual input, sensor, URL, or work list. So now you have a bot behavior. This bot behavior can calculate the net promoter score. And it does that by going to the contact work list, finding the total number of ratings, finding the total promoters, finding the total detractors, then doing a little bit of math here. And we save that whole thing as net promoter score. Once that's done, there's a really simple action of returning the metric value. This is just an action that returns one of your placeholders as output. So the gauge knows what it's displaying. Now also gauges can go negative, and you can have something like this where the label is negative all the way up to 0. Then it's neutral all the way up to 50, and it's positive all the way up to 100. And you get this. Now this is a really interesting widget over here. Before, you could have embedded a work list on this dashboard, and you could have showed the contacts along with some of their custom fields, but it wouldn't have looked nice. All right, so this is what it would have looked like before with just a work list. You have all 10 of the ratings that are listed here with the contact name, and it'll open up the card for each one of them. And you see the 3 fields that we care about, but it's taking up a lot of space here, and there's not much to distinguish a low rating like this from a high rating like this. And look at our new replacement. Here's our replacement. And again, Cerb itself out of the box has no idea what net promoter score means. We're teaching a bot to manage this for you. So this entire section here on the dashboard, the whole widget, is drawn by a bot behavior. So there's a new bot behavior here called render a dashboard widget. And when we created this widget, we said the type was bot behavior, and we called it recent ratings, and we're letting it cache for 60 seconds. And really, this could have been 5 minutes. And then we're telling it to render the recent ratings on a dashboard. This is the behavior that we want. And all this does is it loads a work list of contacts, the same one that we were just looking at, where the net promoter rating isn't null. So we have some data for the net promoter rating from these contacts. And that work list was sorted just to show us the most recent things first. So we're looking at the most recent 10. And then once it has that data, we do anything we want to render it. So we're just doing a little bit of custom HTML here with a little bit of CSS styling and then some of our scripting language markup here. And really you could dissect this later, but if you know HTML and CSS, or you have a developer who does, or you need us to do it, you can do practically anything on a dashboard now based on any kind of information that a bot can retrieve, which means it can go out to any API, it could go out to Amazon or any of your internal systems or anything, pull out some information, run some calculations on it, and then display it in a completely new way that we haven't done before. So now every time somebody does a rating, we're going to see it here. And this looks so natural, it looks like NPS ratings are part of Cerb. And then we have a nice little chart here, which shows us detractors, passives, and promoters over time. So for the last several months, you can see how many of each there were, and then the totals for each category over the whole time period. And the main reason that this chart is useful is you want to see more green to know that your effort is working, that people are more likely to recommend your app or your service over time. This is net promoter scores. We can do the exact same thing for customer satisfaction. Now we have a gauge that's simply averaging all of the ratings that you received. And remember, we were only asking people with a little smiley face, were they happy, were they neutral, or were they unhappy? And that was a 10, a 5, or a 1. So when we average these, we get 9, a little less than them all being 10s. And we show that on the gauge here. We know that we had 5 ratings. This is just a total of the total number of ratings in a work list. We're doing the same thing on a chart here, showing the positives, the neutrals, and the negatives, and totaling them up and showing them as a stacked bar chart. And then we're doing the same thing where Cerb is rendering a completely new type of list based on an existing work list. In this case, we're showing the rating, we're showing the worker who did the reply, and then being able to open up their card. And we're showing the message that they were talking about, which opens up its card. And then the comment that the person left while they were making the satisfaction rating. And the last one here is the customer effort score. And the thing that we asked people to rate their agreement with is the support team made it easy to resolve my issue. We broke this gauge up into 7 sections, one for each of the answers that they could have given. And this is just a standard gauge now. We have all of our labels, all of our thresholds, all of the colors, and now with Cerb it'll interpolate colors. So if you just give it the first and last color, it'll make up all these colors in between. You can give it the first, the middle, and the last. It'll do the same thing. And then the data source here, we're just looking at a ticket work list where customer effort ratings aren't null. We're averaging the customer effort rating. So in this case, that scale is 1 to 7, where strongly disagree is 1 and strongly agree is 7. We're averaging that, and we're saying for the 4 ratings we had, which were somewhat agree, disagree, strongly agree, and agree, we have a 5, which is putting us right on the border here of agree and somewhat agree. And then we're doing the same thing. We're counting how many ratings we had. We're looking at our ratings over time, and this sample data is really simplistic, but we see that we had 3 in agreement and we had 1 in disagreement. And again, a bot is drawing this widget as if Cerb knows exactly what a customer effort score is, even though the bot is just generating this on the fly from an existing work list. So there you go, net promoter scores, customer satisfaction scores, customer effort scores in Cerb using bots and custom field sets and some improvements to dashboards, and absolutely no code in Cerb itself that has anything to do with surveys.
Try Cerb for free at cerb.ai.